And we are live. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to a Bookish Moment. I am your host for today, Sarah Burr. My dear co-conspirator, J.C. Kenney, is still reveling in post-wedding celebrations. J.C. had a wedding in the family this weekend, so he sends his regards for today's episode, and we will see him at our next show. We also want to shout out to our wonderful sponsor for today's episode. Today's episode of A Bookish Moment is brought to you by cozy mystery author Paula Charles, whose newest book, A Zappy Little Christmas, came out today, just in time for your holiday reading list. So many thanks to Paula for sponsoring today's episode with our wonderful guest and dear friend of the show, Marilyn Levinson, who is also joining us here in capacity as her pen name, Allison Brook, because we are celebrating a release for you as well, Marilyn. You are celebrating, not only is it a brand new book, but it's kicking off a brand new series for you. So I'm super excited to be able to talk about Death on Dickens Island with you and get to learn about Delia Dickens and all of that good stuff. But first, welcome to A Bookish Moment.
Oh, thanks so much, Sarah. You know how much I love to come here. And I'm sorry that Jim isn't with us because I feel so bad that his cat died. And well, I'm glad that his son got married. That's really nice.
So he sends his apologies for not being here, but I'm sure you'll be back to chat with us in the future, and we can all catch up on our lives together. But we have a lot of ground to cover in just 30 minutes today, so I want to make sure that we dive in. But first, saying hello to some of our wonderful audience members who are joining us this afternoon. We've got DHB chiming in with a good afternoon. Fashionable Bookworm saying good afternoon. Alma Collins is saying hello from Arkansas. So welcome, folks. Make sure if you have any questions for Marilyn to drop them in the chat as we go on. As I mentioned before, we're here talking about Death on Dickens Island, which is first in a brand new cozy mystery series, the Books by the Beach mysteries. And I'm super excited to talk about this one because, Marilyn, the spot that you've chosen is very close to where not only where you live, but also to where I live. So it'll be fun to kind of talk about the setting and all of that good stuff. And real quickly before we dive in, we have Farmhouse Reader congratulating you on your release as well. So thank you guys for being here. Let's dive in. Let's get bookish. Marilyn, but I guess before we dive into the topic of Delia Dickens and how she came to be, for folks who may not be familiar with you and your work, do you mind just giving us like a little overview of your life, your writing journey, and kind of what led you to writing cozy mystery? I know that's a big question for a little amount of time, but
I'll try and do it in a minute. Okay, I started writing children's books, which I still do. I just wrote the fourth book of my Rufus Run Amok series.
Oh, wow. Book 4 already.
Yeah. This was, well, the first book was I wrote many years ago, and then Dawn had gotten me my, she's now gone. My agent, she got me for a 4-book contract for that. And I really love this series, and it's about a boy who's a witch. And I wrote it before Harry Potter, so it's you can imagine, you get an idea of the time period, and also the fact that I had written that it was a different kind of an idea. And I really love the way the series has evolved. So I've written about 6-8 children's books. Then I started writing mysteries about 20 years ago. And things were slow until the first book of my Haunted Library series came out. Suddenly everything exploded, and suddenly all these wonderful things were happening. And I wrote that series for 8 books, and I figured that by the eighth book, the story arc was complete.
Mm-hmm.
And I know many readers were not happy that I ended it, but I felt it was right. And I could go on. I really could go on. I know how I would do it, but I do have other series that I've started. And then I decided I wanted to write this book. Meanwhile, I was so lucky that um, a lot of my books were with one small press took the books from another small press, and then that press split, and somebody opened up a new boutique um, publishing house,
Mm-hmm.
and she wanted all of my mysteries. And she published the very first one I wrote, which was really a suspense. They re-edited, different covers, and those books are doing very nicely. And somebody else wanted my children's books, so two of them were taken, and one has already come out. So I had a lot of books coming out in this year and last year,
Mm-hmm.
and I was writing two books at a time, which I wasn't very happy about because I don't do that very well. Um, but at least one was a children's book and one was a mystery, an adult mystery. And so now I have to get back to the second book in the series of the new series. Yeah. Um, Now to get back to where I had been on a vacation in the San Luis Islands, which are far away on the other side on Washington, near Washington State.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I guess they're part of Washington State. And I wasn't prepared to write. I was very taken with being on the island. And I guess we live on an island, but I never think of it because we're
Yeah,
always
it doesn't
connected.
really feel like an island, except when you're trying to get off of it. Then it's like
Oh,
there are
yes,
two
yes.
bridges.
Yeah, right. But we're really connected to Brooklyn and Queens and all,
Mm-hmm.
so I never think of us as really an island. But when I went to this island, I loved being in this little town.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I mean, the island was much bigger than the one I said, I said to myself, this is like 4 years ago. I'm going to create an island, but I'm going to make it closer to home.
Mm-hmm.
So and I had just finished writing a series that took place in Connecticut. I have a special affinity for Connecticut because when I grew up, we had a summer home on Lake Kenosha. It was a very small lake near Danbury. So I figured, well, let me put this island in the middle of Long Island Sound, somewhat near river, river with riverheads really down in the water, but someplace between in the deepest part, the widest part of the distance between Long Island and Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to be careful because I didn't want to cross any real ferry lines. So I created an island and I made it shaped like this, sort of an egg on its side.
Mm-hmm.
And there I am doing research. And what am I researching? I'm looking into Shelter Island. How big is it? Because I've been on Shelter Island. I'm trying to get an idea of how far everything is from, and from this and that. And also, of course, I was intrigued by Captain Kidd. He really lived in Manhattan, and he did bury some loot on Gardiner's Island, another small island off the coast of Long Island. And so part of my story, there's an element of Captain Kidd, who
Ooh.
really did live in Manhattan, and he did sail up and down Long Island Sound. So, then you have to set up a structure, where the houses are, where the beaches, where the bird sanctuary is, and I had to set up a ferry line between Long Island and the island, and quite a large
Yeah,
amount
I mean,
of
because
into it.
when you think about the creation of a cozy mystery world, usually we have our town, and that town is situated in a state that has everything else around it. If you need to like reference it, for example, in my books, there's always like the county medical examiner's office, or there's the county hospital that's like not in the town, but it's around it enough that like my characters can interact with it if they need to. But on an island, you're basically creating a locked room mystery for
Mhm.
yourself because, if it's happening on the island, it's pretty much staying on the island. So I can imagine that coming up with all of that different, all the different logistics that you need, it's basically a mini world in its own. And to take it, I find that so funny that you had to cross reference the existing fairy lines, because I remember when I was younger, we would come visit our family that lived on Long Island, and we would take the Orient Point, the Orient Point ferry.
Orient Point, yeah.
Yeah, and going across Long Island Sound, and it's like, well, you can't have an island in the middle of that. So that
Right, exactly. And then there's another line. So there are two lines going to
hmm I
Connecticut. So
think
you go,
it's New
um,
London and New Haven, or is that where
exactly.
okay.
Yeah, right. And then I love to delve into the history, into
hmm
people's histories. So I had to create a history for the island, in two ways, and how the ownership went down. Well, I figured a person could have bought it because Gardiner's Island belonged to someone.
hmm
So I have, and then I use the name Dickens. I just finished answering your questions, for the other thing,
hmm
because she's not, as far as she knows, connected, to Charles Dickens. But I guess we always had these literary associations in our
hmm
minds, and so her name is Cordelia, and Delia is really Cordelia, and from Shakespeare, and I just used Dickens Island for there's some reason. I just, you're drawn to literary names
hmm
somehow. And I find that when I have these ideas, they come back and I use them somehow. So you never know what's going to happen,
You
in
don't.
the future.
And the really, we have all of our cozy tropes that we love to use in our writing. But I think what each of us authors brings is like a new spin on approaching the genre. And you do it in several different ways in this book. But my favorite, I think, and it's because it's one that I don't come across a lot in the genre itself, is Delia is not only, I mean, she's mid-30s, mid to late 30s. She's divorced, but she also has a son who's 15 years old, and they have a very interesting relationship, especially at the start of the book, where it's quite strained because her son has been living with his grandparents for most of his life, and I would really love to know. That's not a backstory we normally see in a cozy mystery. So, what inspired that Delia to have kind of this family unit that's kind of coming back together as the story begins?
It's so funny because when you become more of a pantser author,
Mm-hmm.
things just come to you,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't know why they come to you. I mean, I do know her background. It's just that she left an abusive marriage, but it's all connected. Well, I bring it to the book, to what happened when she broke up with Jack, and the mindset that she was in. How things happen to us, and how we imagine something, and we don't even know that it's true, but somehow this shapes some very, very important decisions that we make. And so she gets married. She meets someone in college and she marries him. And he turns out to be very egotistical and selfish, and does not want any competition for her attention, including a baby.
Mm-hmm.
And and so what happens is not, it's not that she planned to, she moved into Manhattan with her son, and everything went wrong. The daycare, she had daycare for him, and the place closed. She couldn't get it. She couldn't get another placement, and every time she had babysitters, they would disappoint her. And I mean, her parents lived on the island, and she would go there, and she got to leave them more and more and more. And it wasn't anything deliberate or anything, anything mean on her part. She just felt that, he was good there. And then when she'd come and, be the mother, it was like, her parents had their way of dealing with him.
Mm.
And here we have conflicting, and so she came less and less. And of course, he resents this, because, yeah, he loves his grandparents, but there's that sense of, you left me, you dropped me here, and and so there's this problem of their relationship. She wants to get closer to him, but he keeps pushing her away. And I think the thing that brings them together is Riley, a dog. I know.
We love our animals.
And don't ask me why I used a bearded collie. I saw these rags.
Mm-hmm.
She's going up the stairs to her house, which is a Victorian house, and on the porch is what looks like a rag, these rags, and it's the dog curled up, and his coat is very unkempt, he's a mess.
Mm-hmm.
And there he is on her porch.
You always have such interesting like dog breeds in your books, I feel like. Because I remember in one of the haunted library mysteries you had, was it a Basenji? Was that I or it was some dog that I like had
Oh
never heard
yes.
of before. I was like,
it
Marilyn
was
always
no
like
it was
introduces
it
me
was
to
a
dogs I
Russian
don't know.
wolfhound. It was a Russian
Yes.
wolfhound. Uh, yeah.
And it's
Yeah,
like,
he was
oh,
a
you
pet.
always come up with like such like fun like I learn about new dog breeds from your writing, which is super fun. But there's also like so you mentioned this relationship, and it's I think it's something that is even if people can't necessarily relate to the situation, I think there are times in our lives where we've all felt like maybe abandoned by somebody, or we have felt that like we've had to leave something behind in order for it to flourish. So both of those perspectives of Delia and Connor, I think, are both very valid for the reader to like discover and identify with. And I think that's just such a really refreshing relationship to see played out in a cozy mystery. So I commend you for letting your imagination like bringing this to life. Because you've done so many cool things in here, and when you were talking about your writing career and how many mysteries you've written, how did you figure out what, I guess, the murder weapon or the method of murder for a brand new series? Like, what's your, I guess, what's your thought process on how do I present my mystery or my dead body in a way that is captivating, but also like a way to engage the reader in something that you haven't done before?
Well, I never use guns because I very often my characters get hit over the head or
Mm-hmm.
things, because it is a cozy, and I really am not. I have no knowledge of, and even my research. I have no knowledge about firearms and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. But in this, the gun was necessary, which I won't go into. But it really was necessary to use a gun in both cases. Um, so, but I don't think that we have to vary the method of murder that as much as I think people are more interested in the characters and their
Mm-hmm.
connections to each other. And I love to go into their past, and of course the history of the people in the book, as well as the history of the island itself, play a role. They play roles in this in this book, and more than more so than the than than the method of murder, because it's just not really that important in a
Hmm.
cozy. Yeah.
That's a good point that you make, because especially there are times, actually just recently in I'm working on a new manuscript for my trending topic mystery series, and there is a scene where Coco, my main character, she gets hurt. And because she gets hurt, she gets taken in an ambulance to the hospital. Um, and I'm thinking, it's like, oh man, like I just had another character in my previous book get hurt and she had to go to the hospital. It's like, okay, so both of my characters are in these ambulances, but one character does her sleuthing at the hospital, and then Coco, she like encounters somebody in the ambulance that actually has information about her crime. So like trying to vary the experiences when it's like, if you
Mm.
get hurt, you have to go get help. And but to make it something different for the reader to explore, that's up to us to present it in such a way that's different. But I'm interested, like, how did you find? I don't use guns either in my writing, just because I'm terrified of them. The only time that I use a gun is like when like the killer is confronting, like the heroine, and it was like, you better
I
not
think,
tell anybody. But I'm like, I've never used it as a murder weapon before. So was there any like, did you feel that like your research changed at all? Because you said like even like having to figure out like, well, what do you do with a gun? Like, how easily
well,
traceable is it? All of that good stuff. Like, how did you make it work for your?
I well, it ended up being hidden because
Mm-hmm,
as there's a lot of history, and the murders are connected, and it's
mm-hmm.
very involved how they are connected. So it just fit perfectly,
Nice.
and it just dovetailed. So I was very lucky about that, and that just worked out in terms of the murder weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I don't think I ever had to deal with a murder weapon before. I've used poison and hitting over well, I guess the murder weapon that, like, if you use a vase, that's certainly the murder weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then of
I love.
course I
It's always fun to hear like there's so many there's so many things that you can use to like kill
well,
somebody.
I think that you just made a good point. Like you're talking about. Okay, you sent people to the hospital,
Mm-hmm.
and just there's so many different ways of making use of that.
Mm-hmm.
You could make one of the EMTs being in on whatever. Do you know what I mean? In other words,
Mm-hmm.
that we have this freedom to do what we want with the scene, and let's say you give the scene to five people, write something about somebody going off in a ambulance because they've been hurt, and you'll get five different answers. The ambulance didn't go where it was supposed to. Somebody in the ambulance was a crook, whatever. In other words, there's so much you can do with each different setting, and and bringing that up, I like to have ghosts in my books. Not every
Yes.
book, but a lot of them. And I love the fact, the grandmother lent herself to this, and in the secret room. So I have a Victorian house given to her, and her son finds the secret room, but nobody goes in the secret. Nobody knows that the grandmother is talking to Delia. Her name is Helena, and you find out about her life. So, there are a lot of secrets, there are a lot of mysteries, there are a lot of, everyone has a story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, well, we have Alma commenting in the chat saying Death on Dickens Island sounds very interesting. And yes, you've got all of these threads that you're pulling on. So I'm wondering, you mentioned that you're working on book 2 already. Um, did you feel, I guess what's the difference between writing book one of a series and like setting everything up and then going into book two? Do you feel as much pressure to set the scene for readers, or do you feel that it just more organically kind of comes out through the storytelling?
Well, it's very interesting. I felt very like nervous when I started this new series
Mm-hmm.
because so many people, oh, you ended this series. Oh, can't you continue it? Well, I said, well, maybe I'll write some short stories about it or, whatever, because I left it where I could always continue it. They move into a
Mm-hmm.
house that is haunted, that has two little children in it. And I could see them, having different Carrie and Dylan having more adventures. But here I had all these, I had to set all new people, create all new people. And I'm thinking, are they going to like these people as much as they like, the people in my Haunted Library series?
Mm-hmm.
And then I once and then I got some phenomenal reviews of this book. And then like two people even wrote, this might even be better than the Haunted Library. Well, so this made me very nervous. There's nothing like having to write up to yourself. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I never felt I had to think about anyone else. I never compared myself to anyone. I feel we're all different and we all handle things differently, but I feel it in the second book because now I'm thinking, I have to, keep it up. But
Mm-hmm.
once I was not my editor, they always have their comments and their thoughts. Well, Marilyn, since the library was such a wonderful, and of course, since I wrote that book, I'm not saying I was the first one to write about libraries, but all of a sudden there's so many books, about library series. So I thought, okay, I'm getting away from the library. I love my library, but enough already. And so my editor says, well, Marilyn, the element of having a library or books is very good and nice. It served you well. Well, why don't you think about introducing it? Well, books on the beach, how did that come about? So, okay, we're going to have Delia's family owns the general store,
Mm-hmm.
so she and she's trying to update it. And her father keeps, well, this I don't know, maybe people won't like it. He's trying to hold everything back, and that's the problem with him. He's a wonderful person, but he tries to stop progress when it comes to the island, as does his brother when it comes to the council. So I decided I would create in this in the middle of the general store a book nook. And
Oh.
okay, this is where I'm an old. I used to teach Spanish, but we'd have discuss literature and okay. So I love to discuss books in books. I did this in my book, Murder a la Christie. I did that, and I did it in one of my children's books where they're discussing that book, that story by Shirley Jackson, the lottery. Okay, so this time the second book, I opened up with a discussion but a different kind of discussion of books and things. So, but I love that. I
Mm-hmm.
find that. So that was something that was, that I was asked to introduce, and that I find fun. So at least that was a good thing. And I do have a basic idea for the second book, but I don't, okay, everything's set up, so it's easier in that way. But I feel like each book I have to you know, prove myself, be as good, if
Mm-hmm.
not better than the last book. And wow, but something, I've learned to trust the method, as I become more of a pantser person, somehow it just comes. It,
Mm-hmm.
it's I don't know, the ideas come. I think it's like we've trained our brains to come up with, you better come up with an idea or
Yes.
else.
I very much agree. And I think number one, that it's great that you don't compare yourself to others, but that you compare yourself to yourself.
I try
Um,
not to. I wouldn't if I
yeah,
didn't get those comments, but yeah,
it's
I
it's definitely I feel that way every single time, and especially I don't think the feeling goes away as the series grows, because you're always like, is this going to deliver what readers love about this series? And I definitely think you're onto something about it being a it's just something that happens organically in our brains as part of the storytelling process, because as I write more and more, my outline gets shorter and shorter and shorter and less coherent. But my at least the feedback that I get from readers is like, oh, like, your latest book is my favorite one that you've written. And so it's like, okay, at least it feels like whatever is going on up here is still delivering the quality that like we want to give to our readers. So I fully have faith in you to knock book 2 out of the park.
well, thank you. I think what happens to us, Sarah, is that we get freer.
Mm-hmm.
Because some of the ideas, I'm amazed, and I said, no, I'm going to write it that way, and I just see that what happens in my books, like even in the last book in the series, where Carrie and Dylan get married, they have this whole adventure before, and they're late for their wedding, and I thought, what a wild thing to, if I ever thought to write it down like this, but it just happened with all these thieves come out of the woodwork, and it just, but it was such fun, and it all
Mm-hmm.
worked out. So I think we become freer.
I think we become freer, and we also, I feel like our readers become more, um, or they're just along for the ride, because book 1, you got to convince them that this is a series worth hanging around for, and then as long as you're able to deliver on that each time, then it's like, okay, we're gonna let them stretch maybe our believability a little bit more each time, but we're still like enjoying and having fun. And speaking of having fun, we've had so much fun that we've already gone over our time, Marilyn. It's I could talk to you. We could talk all day long, but I do want to make sure that we get folks to since the book is out today, release day. So you're here celebrating. Very, very exciting. It's available across all platforms. I think I saw the audiobook is already out or almost already out. I can't quite remember, but folks, make sure, I know it says Marilyn Levinson on our screen right now, but Death on Dickens Island is under Allison Brook, and that's Allison with 2 L's. And I have the information in our show notes for today. But Marilyn, where can folks stay connected with you? What's the best place for them to like connect with you on social media or sign up for your newsletter? What's that?
Yes, space. I'm on Facebook a lot, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where most of my readers are, and many. And I'm on Instagram a little bit. I do have a neat newsletter you could sign up for. It's on my website, which is www.marilynlevinson.com.
Perfect.
And just sign up, and then you'll get my next newsletter. It comes out about once a month. Yeah.
Fabulous. And for recommendations for our viewers after they're done reading Death on Dickens Island, what are some books, TV shows, movies, podcasts, audiobooks? What's entertaining you these days that you have to offer?
Well, I've been watching Purnell on on Netflix. It's a
Mm-hmm.
Norwegian series. It's
Oh, okay.
wonderful. Yeah, she's a mother with 2 daughters,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not very nice to her. She deals with children who are in danger, and
Oh.
oh, her ex-husband, oh, he's a misery. He wrote a book, and what is the book about? It's about her. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, their marriage. I mean, he just, and but it's really, really worth watching.
Excellent.
And I was lucky enough I like to listen to books, to listen to the latest Thursday Murder Club, and I love
Oh,
it. Yeah,
excellent.
just if you don't listen, if you used to not listening, try listening, because these narrators are so phenomenal, and especially in this one. Oh, he just captures the way these people, I was going to say these old people, these people think, and the criminals. Oh, it's terrific. So I
Excellent.
would say get that.
Excellent. Yeah, I am a big believer in audiobooks. I absolutely love them. And I feel like as they catch on more and more that voice actors are getting to be more they're getting to be more free with their performances where, if there's like somebody whistling or somebody singing or coughing, or they're able to like act those out and like enhance the story even more, which I absolutely love. So I those are fabulous recommendations. Alma is confirming that the audio is available on Amazon, which is perfect. So add that to our listening list, folks. And just to kind of give all of our viewers a little bit of a rundown, we are taking a little bit of a breather in our show schedule. We're taking next week off, and we have plenty of episodes that you can catch up on. We've had a super busy month, so JC and I just need a little bit of a rest so that we can catch up on all of our fabulous guests who are joining us. We return with new episodes on November 4th, and we're joined by Melinda Mullet at 4:30 p.m. Eastern here on YouTube. And then on November 6th, we're going to be having Jackie Layton join us as well. So we've got some fun, cozy, mystery-loving adventures ahead of us. And as a quick reminder, folks, that today's episode of A Bookish Moment was sponsored by the wonderful Paula Charles. You can check out her new book, A Zappy Little Christmas, available both in print and ebook wherever books are sold. So we're having two wonderful book birthdays today. Paula Charles, who is a friend of both Marilyn and mine. And then we also have Marilyn's wonderful Death on Dickens Island, first in a brand new series. We can't wait for more from Delia. So grateful, Marilyn, that you were able to take the time and share a moment with us today. So thank you so much for stopping by.
Oh, I always love to come here to talk to you and Jim, and it's my pleasure.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you for loving us, and we look forward to having you back when we get to talk book two. And of course, thank you to our wonderful audience members who joined us both live and after the fact. We really appreciate you guys and all the support that you give our show. And so until next time, stay bookish, everyone. Bye-bye. Have a good afternoon.
Bye.